Let's see who's been paying attention. What have we been talking about for the past several weeks? Matthew. In particular, the Matthew pathway, which is a very interesting system that Pastor Mike himself has put together, and he's asked me to speak a little bit about that today. So, as soon as that gets up, I'll start moving into some of the things that I wanted to talk about here. But in the Matthew pathway, there are 4 big steps that Pastor Mike was talking about along this Christian pathway to help us to build our lives upon. And one of those steps is found in Matthew 13, verses 1 through 23. So I'm going to give you a few moments now to be able to find that in your Bible so you can read it home. All right, can you put me up, Hero? Thanks. Okay. So that same day, Jesus went out of the house, and they sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood around the shore, and he told them many things in parables, saying that a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seeds, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it. Some fell along rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Another fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop of 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Alright, that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. But as we look at what he is talking about there, he's talking about birds and pests. He's talking about rocks. He's talking about weeds that need to be pulled. It's farming. How many of you have ever farmed? Alright, I see a few of you. I spent most of my teenage years out in the field, picking rocks by hand, going out and actually poking holes in the ground with my finger to plant the seeds. It is hard work, especially spending hours out there building calluses, getting pricked by thorns. And I think that's a secondary lesson that isn't actually expressed in here, is there might be a way for us to be able to protect our crop from some of these issues that are coming up throughout this section, the parable of the sower. The first, I entitled this sermon, Old McJesus Had a Farm. Just because I think titles make it a little snappy and help us to remember. Alright, so first we have pest management. Like I talked about, picking rocks, pulling weeds, soil quality, and it being farming, of course. We talked about the 4 big steps, so now let's go into the parable of the sower. We read that already, how he was talking about seeds. Now, when we're talking about seeds, is he literally talking about seeds? No, he's talking about the people that we can actually go out and speak to. People who we're going to be discipling, and how they are going to be reacting to any kind of force that might come up against them. Alright, the first one that he talks about there are pests. Alright, if we continue on in Matthew 13, verse 18. Alright, now listen to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears this message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what is sown in his heart. This is the seeds along the path. So what it's talking about here is when somebody just doesn't quite get what we are talking about, doesn't quite understand what Jesus is saying. For that instance, when the seed that has been eaten up by the birds along the path, farmers have developed a technology that prevents this. Alright, it is a scarecrow. They provide a likeness of something that provokes a sense of self-preservation in the birds. Many people lose their faith because people around them take any chance that they can to take pot shots at their faith. And any sign or mention of faith in order to make them so uncomfortable that they learn that it is picked away before they have a chance to really understand what is going on. This gives us a chance to be the scarecrow. How many of you have ever seen that? Where somebody is trying to learn a little bit about their faith, or trying to express their faith in some way, or trying to maybe step into thinking that there might be something bigger out there than what the schools and society has been telling us about. I know I've seen this personally. And in many cases, I've experienced it personally. One example of this happening is when I worked at a factory in Bloomsburg. I used to do my devotions during my lunch breaks. And do you have any idea how uncomfortable that made other people around me? So much so I actually had supervisors come to me and tell me that I was not allowed to read my Bible on my lunch break because it was making people uncomfortable. You know who was telling me that, or going to the supervisor and ratting me out for my Bible reading? It was a guy that sat next to me reading his porn magazine when he was in between jobs. That was who was jumping on me because my faith was making him feel uncomfortable. Other people also told me during those lunch breaks, you really shouldn't do that. It's making people feel uncomfortable. But what that did was open up conversation. What it allowed me to do is ask, well, why is it making you feel uncomfortable? Why is my faith and my attempts to become a better person, why is that making you feel uncomfortable? It allowed me to witness to them. So I'm going to be giving a couple examples as I'm going through here of different ways that you may not have thought about on how we can go and start witnessing to people and potentially develop some new disciples. As we move on to the next section, we're looking at the rocks. Now, if anyone has ever taken the time to try to pick rocks in a field, I swear rocks are in the potato family. Because no matter how many times you pick those rocks out of the field and toss them into the woods and build stone walls and castles out of these things, the next year you go back and somehow you still find some rocks this big in there. How they got there, I don't know. I swear they must grow. Alright, so we're looking at Matthew 13, 20, and 21. The one who received the seed that fell in the rocky places is a man who hears the word but at once receives it with joy. But since it has no root, he lasts only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, he quickly falls away. Now we've had some people like that who we've invited to our church. The ones who are super excited about their new faith but end up fading away over the coming weeks. Just because things come up. People fall into the lie that once you become a Christian and you have God on your side, that everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be good and hunky-dory and happy and sunshine and rainbows, and that's just not right. When you take a stand, people are going to take a shot at you. So with this, there are two ways to help these people, to help pick these rocks, to make the soil good again, to make the soil rich and nourished and refreshed. And that is through protecting them, kind of like I talked about before, and supporting them. An example of protecting someone who may not be as strong in the faith as you are, to help show them that it's okay, that people are going to be taking shots at you, is something that happened to me over the recent holidays. I'm not sure how many of you have seen the story or remember the story, but there was a young missionary who ended up being martyred for his faith. He tried going and sitting in on a tribe of people that are notorious for going around and killing anyone who comes around. He was allowed to go there with an armed escort, but he didn't want the visual of people standing behind him with guns while he was trying to proclaim love to these people. So, he waited until after they left and tried sneaking back in afterwards so he could show up with just himself and a book and say, "Here, I want to share something with you." And he ended up getting killed for his efforts. The people that I was around at the time were starting to talk about how he got what he deserved for going out and trying to destroy somebody else's culture with his. That he was going around trying to shove his faith down other people's throats. Isn't it kind of odd that they would think that this man was trying to shove his views down somebody else's throats when he refused to go in there with people who would have that show of power? That he decided to go in there with just a book instead of guns. And yet they say he was trying to shove his views down somebody else's throat. At the time that this was going on, there was somebody else in the room that I knew was of the faith, but just didn't understand and didn't know how to address the issue. So it fell to me, and I stood up and I confronted that issue, showing that there is a way that you can have a conversation with somebody like that. And the funny thing is that these people are trying to make us feel so uncomfortable about our faith that we refuse to stand up and say anything about it because it's going to put it on us. But when you do stand up and start saying something about it and refuting the things that they're saying and pointing out some of these little inconsistencies, it makes them so uncomfortable that they refuse to speak up also. Once again, making it safe for us to be able to stand up and express our faith. Another thing that we can do is to support the new believers that come in. I mean, we have a great environment here in our church, don't we? I mean, that is the reason that I went from my last church to this one, like 20 years ago. Because at my church, when we would do our greeting, we would stand up and shake the hand of the person left of us, right of us, in front of us, behind us, and sit down. We even had board meetings where we were told that we should probably neglect shaking anybody else's hand because people were afraid to get sick. And yet I came here and people were giving me hugs and going out to the aisleways and walking up and down and saying hi to everybody. Like, this isn't the church that I was brought up in. This isn't just showing up to be told something that makes us feel good or might be thought-provoking and then go home and let's watch football and mow the grass. Because that was my life up until I was 14 years old, 15 years old. This is a family. Everyone here, I know, absolutely cares deeply about everyone that shows up in this building. I have seen it over and over again that you guys actually step up and show that you are not afraid to be family to somebody. But we are falling a little bit short. When we have new believers, new people coming in and saying, you know what, this is great, I think I might be here. And they show up 1, 2, 3 times and then they never come back. How many of you have ever actually called somebody else's guest just to ask them how they were doing throughout the week? For that matter, how many of us have actually called the people that we brought throughout the week to see how they were doing? So how many of you know when you first come to faith, that's when everything breaks loose. That's when everything goes wrong. That's when you get attacked the heaviest. And yet, even though we care for these people, we neglect to even give them a 5-minute phone call, see how they're doing, and see if there's anything we can do to help. Now, I know this is something that I'm failing on also. But I think it would be something good for us that when there is somebody new in the building, just saying hi, asking them who they are, get their phone number. Give them a call. It takes 2 minutes. And yet taking that personal step to actually show that you're not the face of the hypocrite that so many people out there think that we are. That we actually do care deeply about people, deep enough that we'll actually take time to give them a phone call and see how they're doing. That is going to separate us so much from everyone else out there that is just, oh, hi, how are you, with the perfect hairdo and the perfect outfit and looking absolutely stunning on Sunday. Yeah, it's all right. I know. I am that perfect stunning person. But I need to be more of that real person throughout the week. All right, moving on to the thorny weeds. Now, those of you who even do a little bit of gardening, when you end up with thorny weeds in your garden, in your field, a lot of times you have trouble getting weeds out by the roots, but when one of them has thorns, and you grab a hold of that thing, sometimes it makes me want to say things that aren't so Christian. But we need to get them out, or else they will end up choking out the new, fresh seedlings of faith. So that is in 22. The one who received the seed fell among the thorns is the one who hears the word, but the worries of life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke it, making it unfruitful. Farmers have actually come up with several ways to deal with these. You can go out and just pull it. You can put down barriers underneath your plants to keep the seeds from sprouting up. You can pull out some weed killers and go weapons of mass destruction against any kind of non-flowering plant that you would want in your garden. We as a church can do the same thing. Along with that last suggestion that I gave, getting to know people, once they feel comfortable enough that they can actually put down roots in our family, we can get to know them. We can know what their worries are. We can know when they're putting too much time into trying to build wealth that isn't going to lead them to what they actually want. Did you know there's actually 2 ways to become slaves to money? One is to have so much of it that your life completely revolves around making more. And the other is to be so poor that the only thing that occupies your mind is how am I going to take care of my finances? In both ways, you become a slave to money because your entire way of thinking is revolving around money, finance, and the gathering of more wealth. We as a church have done really well with this. Some examples that we have are Cindy and Michelle with Your Loving Choices. They go out there and they help people with these crisis pregnancies, and they help all these other with all these other services that they provide there. They're showing people that they care and being able to take care of some of these worries. We also have Bob and Dee with their providing food and clothing with their Not by Bread Alone in Maureen's Closet, providing the needs for people that they might be worried about if we weren't there for them. Myself and my wife, we provide free customized financial plans for people, showing them that there can be light at the end of the tunnel when they're in debt and how to plan for the future. All right, Mike and Donna have been spearheading the Hope Center and mentoring anybody that has any need for any kind of advice, as well as really too many other services to really mention. Now, I know there are a lot of us in here that have these just amazing skills, that we have talents, that we have time, that we have experience, that we can actually be using to help these other people. The problem is that we're spending too much time trying to invite people into this building instead of going out and learning more about them. Now, I mean, we're doing good inviting people in. Continue to invite people into our church because people need an environment like this, someplace that's safe with people who actually care about them. But maybe it would be just as effective, if not more effective, for us to be going to them. Because how many of us have invited people here and they don't show up? I know quite a few of us, right? I know Bob's a great example of this. He's playing Indian Lookout out in the front foyer almost every week. People don't always show. A lot of it's because of the stigma that they hear about the Christian faith. And if all we're doing is trying to invite people to come into a church when all they hear out in the world is about how they're hypocrites in there, that they're just trying to get you in there so that way you can give them money, that they're going to stab you in the back as soon as they get a chance, but even though they look like really friendly people, you shouldn't go there. It's not going to be as effective trying to invite people into an environment like this when that's what they're hearing all around. Even with how much good that we are doing out there in the communities, I think it would be much better just to invite somebody over for tea. Or a board game night. Or a meal. Just get people to come to us or for us to go to them. Allow them to see who we are as people. I heard something really interesting about 2 weeks ago. I heard a lady talking about how she was running her business. And it made a big difference in how people perceived her when she stopped having her business as being something that she does, as having her business be something that she is. Now, I think that's something that we can take to heart. Is Christianity, is our faith, is discipling people just something that we do? Or is it part of who we are? Because when it's just something that you do, people aren't going to really take it seriously. It's like the people who play football into their 30s, or the people who go out and play softball and baseball. It's something that they do. They're never going to get out there and be a major league softball player. We're not going to go out there in most cases and be the PGA golf champion. It's just something that they do. But if it's something that they are, something that is a part of them, that is when people start taking it seriously. A good example of this is a conversation that I had with my boss a couple weeks ago. He knew that I was Christian. He knew that I kind of did a little service for my mom's wedding. He knew that I occasionally spoke over church, but he thought, you know what, it's just something that he does. Until he saw how consistent I was with it, and how often I would have just little conversations with him about it. Now, this guy has some really odd views on faith, but he is not afraid to have a conversation with me because I'm not trying to prove him wrong. I'm just sharing my beliefs with him. And through that, through being respectful of his views, respectful of allowing him to have his own opinion, he started coming around and thinking and actually saying, you really believe in this stuff, don't you? And when it went from, oh, this is just something that he does, to something he really believes in, it went from the just casual conversations for intellectual purposes to him starting to really think deeply about what it was that I was saying. There was a big difference when there was that transition between something I do and that's something that is a part of me. So that is what I'm going to be asking us to do. To start making a transition from church and our faith being just something that we do into making it something that is a part of who we are. Something that is core to who we are. And through doing that, we are going to become good soil. By following these principles, we can not only grow to be seeds that fell on good soil and start producing the fruit, start producing new disciples, whether it be 30, 60, 100. Don't need to stop there. You can go to 10,000 if you want. I wouldn't mind. But we would start becoming fruit that bears seeds that also fall on good soil, which will bear more fruit. And instead of growing by onesies and twosies like we have been, kind of more through a baby boom than bringing in new people, but hey, bring more babies, that's fun too. But why don't we start trying to bring in more people through going out to them? So that way we can transform the ground that these seeds are landing on into good soil as well, and allow them to come in and start producing. Alright, so that is all that I have for today. Before I release you back into the field, I'd like to ask if there are any specific prayer requests that you would like to go out. Once? Twice? No? We're good? Alright, very good. Let's pray. Alright, dear Father God, I ask that you allow each person to gather from this sermon what you would have them gather. Every one of us is in a different place in life, Lord. I ask you to lead us in the way that you would have us go specifically. I ask you to bless each person throughout the week to lead us to the people that you would have us talk to, so that way we can follow the Great Commission by going forth into the world and making disciples of all the nations. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Have a good week.
Okay.